Today's video is sponsored by Skillshare. Themes resonate most deeply when they are felt, not told. Jacob's Ladder and The Witcher 3, which are pretty different by comparison, are excellent demonstrations of how internal and external conflict work together to reveal themes naturally. In The Witcher, there is a message of fatherhood and morality, while in the film Jacob's Ladder, there are themes of trauma, grief, and the struggle for redemption. The Lobster and Poor Things highlight how absurdity and subversion can explore themes without making them feel heavy-handed, providing tasteful commentary on social norms. And even stories like those within the Overstory and nearly every film that comes out of Studio Ghibli, there is an exploration and message of environmentalism that is beautiful and heartbreaking and deeply nostalgic. We probably have an idea of when a story beat us over the head with its theme or shoehorned its message at the very end. Writing a strong theme is tricky. It's often about balancing telling a compelling story while also having that story say something equally as compelling. But themes are important. They are what make us feel something, think something. It is the through message that gives meaning to the narrative. But making a theme too powerful or too obvious can take a strong theme and make it overpowering, often becoming the biggest turnoff to a reader. Welcome back to the Wrestling with Words podcast. My name is Cameron. I'm a writer, an editor, and your host. Here, we talk about all things related to writing and storytelling. And the goal is to help you tell better stories while also understanding how the best stories are told. A little bit of housekeeping first. Feel free to skip ahead if you don't want to hear a little bit of an update. There's a lot of probably new people here to the channel, and there's also quite a few of you that have been returning. But I don't think I've done a proper update in quite some time. This being the new year and the third season of this sort of video podcast, I'm trying to think about how to do it better. One thing I'm going to start to do is take bigger concepts or maybe bigger ideas and go a little bit more in detail for a series of videos. Then combining them all into a sort of master video in case people want to see them all as one thing strung together. Also, I'm thinking about starting another channel where it will be exclusively for the video podcast. I haven't fully committed to this idea yet, but it is something that I am sort of playing around with. I really want to try to start to engage more with the audience and pick topics that resonate with you or that people sort of have questions about. Feel free to let me know in the comments or send me an email if there is something as in a topic or suggestions you have for the channel. This video is going to be part of a series where we're going to look at how to tell a compelling and strong theme without having that theme be overpowered or come off as forced. When using the term theme, know that we are discussing the main idea or the subject of a story. This is a message or what everything is really about. And one way we can create a strong theme, and probably in the most subtle of ways, and one of the ones that I think is sometimes the most interesting, is to display or have a theme come out through our world building. We can use the world or the setting to reflect our theme or to maybe tell or have a parallel theme to the main one. We see this done all the time in fantasy, science fiction, and especially in horror. For Studio Ghibli, the world and nature are generally never just a place or a physical setting. The worlds are direct reflections of the conflict taking place within the story and offer a message that sometimes directly relates to the main theme. We can look at the conflict in Princess Mononoke. Ashitaka is almost like a mediator between San and Lady Eboshi. San being a representation of the forest and nature, and Lady Eboshi being a representation of industrialization. The world building and setting directly reflect the conflict, enhancing the message and themes, even if the message is a little bit explicit at the end. And in Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, the world, despite being deadly and toxic, is given a very strange beauty. And Nausicaa isn't afraid of this place. She understands it. She does everything she can to show the natural world that she is not to be feared. There is a measured level of cooperation and synergy. Man is fearful, and so man is violent. Nature is fearful, and so nature is violent. But Nausicaa isn't. The message of operating from a position of fear is a theme throughout the story, but is enhanced by the deep divide between the civilized world and the natural world. And these are great examples of how we can look at how the world can influence the characters in our story, asking how this setting shapes their ideas, ideals, and beliefs, while also figuring out what they value. We can ask, in what ways does this world shape all of those things? And also, in what ways does this character and the ideas that they have rebel against this world? Somewhere in there, in the relationship between world building and characters, there is a message. And so we might ask ourselves, what message is reflected in the setting? And is there a message when the characters interact with it? There's often a message or a through line that develops where the world says something very specific on its own or on the main theme of the story. When we are including these world elements and building an immersive setting, we can use motifs and symbols to mirror the ideas of the themes that we have. In the Witcher universe, the world is filled with monsters and magic, and even features a monster hunter as our main protagonist. But the story isn't really about monster hunting. We so often find that Geralt is mixed up in other things, and as a result, there are unique themes that are explored. One of the main ones being that the monsters in the world aren't the real monsters. This is sort of the main theme of The Last Wish, building off the idea of finding the lesser of two evils, or if there is a lesser of two evils. But the idea that monsters aren't the real monsters is a reoccurring idea in the world of the games and the other books as well. It is sort of a joke and a meme within the story.
What? What are you doing? Killing monsters. Good one.
Just came out that way.
The monsters and its magical setting is almost like a proxy to explore the real horrors, the real monsters of humankind. Something else that the world building can do when it comes to writing strong themes is to build a thematic atmosphere. And also in line with this, that atmosphere might subvert something, or it might enhance the themes that are present. Does the world in some way contradict or offer a contrary message to what the characters are going through? And also in line with this, does it subvert something? Does it enhance a concept? These are all great lines of thought to consider when considering how the setting can build a strong and impactful theme. A great example of this is the strange world and bizarre atmosphere in Poor Things. This strange steampunk version of Europe puts us into Bella's shoes and makes us feel as if we are in a new place, seeing things, trying to make sense of it all for the first time. This world is bizarre and foreign, enhancing the themes of self-discovery and subverting and questioning social norms we might be familiar with and associate with this time period. In part, it is a feminist retelling of Frankenstein, but it is also more than that. It is a steampunk fever dream that is hypnotizing, dark, funny, and deeply unsettling, but all for intended reasons. Its goal is to make us feel uncomfortable, make us laugh when we shouldn't, to keep watching when we should turn away, and to question our own social norms. And I don't think we can talk about using atmosphere or even using world building to create thematic settings without including the horror genre, where sometimes the central idea that goes beyond just the slasher violent elements and the jump scares is buried within the dark and twisted setting that it is set within. The setting of the lighthouse reflects the themes of isolation, power struggles, and madness. The lighthouse and the island serve as a prison for characters, amplifying their psychological unraveling. The oppressive weather and claustrophobic quarters reflect their growing paranoia and enable their toxic relationship. In The Haunting of Hill House, there are themes of isolation, mental illness, and the fragility of identity. Hill House is not just a setting, but a character in and of itself. Its labyrinth and disorienting layout mirrors Eleanor's psychological instability. The house's oppressive atmosphere reflects her deep loneliness and longing for belonging, drawing her further into its grasp. And we can also look at the video game Bloodborne, where themes of esoteric knowledge, religion, and the horrors of transformation are all seen throughout the world and setting. Yarham's Gothic architecture and its descent into eldritch horror reflects the dangers of blind faith and the pursuit of forbidden knowledge. The gradual unraveling of reality mirrors the player's growing understanding of the nightmare. And what is so awesome about using world building to enhance themes is that it can also reflect so much more. It can reflect the conflict that is going on. It can reflect some sort of commentary that you are exploring. It can build immersion and have a powerful message on its own or in tandem with that main theme. And it should be mentioned too that with all of these elements and within all of these examples, symbolism and subtext are sometimes the biggest allies we can deploy. Usually when it comes to marrying the world building or the setting to some sort of theme, there's a great deal of subtext that is used in the process. Reoccurring symbols can enhance thematic resonance without being too heavy-handed or even on the nose. For instance, in The Road, it never really directly discusses hope, but it is felt deeply in the father's determination to protect his son in a barren and bleak world. And in the game Firewatch, themes of loneliness and emotional healing emerge naturally through the player's exploration of the world within the forest and the mountains. But I love being able to pick apart thematic moments when it comes to the setting and the world. One, because it makes the message that is being relayed to the audience that much more impactful. And two, if it is done subtly, it can build immersion and these thematic layers. Sometimes the message isn't noticed until an important thematic moment or until you've gone back on your second or third pass. However, using world building is a more subtle way to bring color to an idea or a concept. But this isn't the only way that we can build stronger themes. And this next one I don't often see spoken about enough, but I think is as equally as important. But I have talked a lot in the past about how Skillshare has helped me with learning new skills like painting and illustration to help me with understanding these skills for my own writing when I'm writing a character that is better at a thing than I am. Well, recently I've partnered again with Skillshare and have another class to recommend to you. With the new year here, I have been trying to revamp my time management process, and Skillshare's classes with Jules Acree couldn't have come at a better time. Skillshare is the largest online community for creatives with thousands of classes led by industry experts across film, illustration, design, freelance, productivity, and more. Skillshare can help you take your career, skills, hobbies, passions, or side hustles to the next level. It's a platform built by creatives for creatives. Whatever your interest is, Skillshare likely has a class on it. There are a ton of topics you can join, from graphic art and painting to productivity and creative writing. Like I said, this new year, I've been trying to get control over my schedule and make it something aesthetic and appealing to approach, as opposed to the physical notebook that I have that's totally falling apart. Also, Skillshare's seasonal theme for this month is creativity as a practice, which I think directly relates to all of us here. The way Skillshare sees it is that creativity is a muscle. The more you exercise and build your craft, the more you grow in any creative discipline that excites you. Consider coming over and practicing your creativity on Skillshare. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today. Thank you again to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Strong themes resonate more when they are embodied in a character's actions and choices, rather than being explicitly stated. Show don't tell is a overused bit of writing advice, but I think when it comes to themes it is still more than relevant. And characters with extreme positions allow themes to come alive through their actions and through conflict, making those themes identifiable as opposed to being explicitly stated. These characters can either embody the theme itself, or they can be a foil to reflect from it, creating a clear contrast to play around with these ideas for your audience to wrestle with. It's conflict and change that make themes feel powerful without feeling overpowering. And not only does this make things more interesting from the audience's perspective, but it also allows the themes to come out naturally and organically. But before we go too far down this, there are two things I do want to highlight. One, character arcs are almost always synonymous with themes, or at least tied to them in some way. And two, I don't exactly want to talk about character arcs specifically for this conversation, especially when we are focusing on themes here. It can sometimes be too easy for us to try and fit a character into a nice arc to then put across the plot. Instead, I want us to more so focus on the fundamental and core beliefs that that character might have, and also their wants and needs. I understand that your character is going to change, and that's a great thing. But first, give them a strong or even extreme position to change from. And if you can, identify or at least tie this strong or extreme position with some part of your theme. How much more interesting is it to see a character that is hell-bent on revenge rather than seeing one that is just kind of warm to the idea? Would Guts be nearly as interesting of a character if he wasn't fueled by rage and revenge? Is Mildred Hayes in 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri as interesting of a character if she wasn't going to such extreme measures to get justice for her daughter's unsolved murder? Or how about Carrie White in Carrie by Stephen King, who is pushed to an extreme by religious fanaticism at home and relentless bullying at school? Her repressed world makes her only outlet a violent one. And there is Jacob Singer in Jacob's Ladder. Jacob is a Vietnam veteran tormented by horrifying visions and his inability to reconcile his past. His fragmented reality reflects the disorienting effects of trauma and guilt. His extremes, oscillating between memories, visions, and apparent realities, force the audience to confront the fragility of the human psyche and the nature of redemption. Having a character possess an extreme position will help in developing and delivering on that theme. And if you don't want to give a character or your main character a strong position that relates to the theme, giving them a strong position will create conflict, which will make that theme more interesting. But looking more specifically at that idea and how to write it, let's ask a few questions. What is the starting position of this character? What would have to happen to move this character off that position? What happens when someone is moved? How does this change other characters' ideas of them? And how are other elements impacted? What moved someone to this extreme position to begin with? What moves them off of a strong position? Themes start to emerge naturally when a character is struggling with some sort of moral or external dilemma that picks at the very heart of a belief or a feeling that they have. And we do want to avoid overly stating the theme here, but we can let it emerge naturally through a character's actions and even dialogue and consequences. This strong position can be a good way of showing as opposed to telling what your theme is. Allow your character to embody some element of it through their flaws and virtues, or have multiple characters embody different parts of this theme or the thematic message that you are trying to explore. The growth and regression becomes intertwined with thematic moments. That makes sense in terms of an arc or a plot progression, and then are intertwined with all those things. For instance, The Last of Us is a story about love. Despite the societal collapse, apocalyptic survival elements, fungaloid zombies, and rogue factions. But the story itself embodies the extreme lengths we go to for loved ones. Joel's internal conflict between survival and humanity drives the theme of love and sacrifice. He embodies a very violent and primal urge that comes out when someone's loved one is threatened. Joel's flaw and his virtue is that violent length he is willing to go. He will forsake a potential cure and kill anyone in his way to protect Ellie, to make sure that he doesn't lose another daughter. And in a way, that extreme nature comes at a cost. It causes us to ask what we would do in his place. It makes us look at Kathleen and her own warpath and see that her and Joel aren't that different. It makes us understand and maybe agree with the tragic but loving outcome between Bill and Frank. We look at a thing like love and think of it as being a pure and innocent part of life. But it isn't. It's violent. It's messy. It's extreme. We talked a lot about world building and characters. In the next one, we're going to talk about plot and how negative points combined with all of these elements can create a powerful and strong theme that doesn't overpower your audience. But if this topic today interested you, consider clicking on the video that you see on the screen now. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.